Do you think my son is a charity project? The question did not come quietly. Han Mikyung stood in the center of her own living room with the full weight of her authority behind her and her voice pitched exactly loud enough to make sure everyone present understood that this was not a conversation. This was a verdict. Devon Hall did not move. I didn't come here to be approved, she said. I came because he invited me. Invited you? Mikyung stepped forward. Or did you follow him here looking for a better life? Because let's be honest about what this really is. Devon held her ground. If you had something better to say, you wouldn't need to shout. That landed. Mikyung's expression sharpened immediately. Better to say? Her voice rose. I have plenty to say. You came into this house with nothing. You have nothing. And you think you can stand here and speak to me like an equal? I don't think so, Devon said calmly. I know it. The room tensed visibly. Mikyung moved closer, her voice dropping to something harder and more deliberate. You are not what this family needs. You are not what my son needs. And everyone in this room can see exactly what you are. Then say it, Devon said. Stop circling it and say what you actually mean. Mikyung's eyes narrowed. Gold digger. She said it like a period at the end of a sentence. Then louder, for the room. Gold digger. Leave my son alone. Devon looked at her slowly. Then something shifted in her expression, not rage, not hurt, something colder and more precise than both. A woman who has to drag strangers into her home to fight battles her son already settled, Devon said quietly, should be more careful about which battles she picks. The air left the room. Mikyung's face tightened. Don't call me that again, Devon said. I will call you whatever I. The door opened. Han Sungjae did not walk in. He moved in the way a storm moves. His eyes swept across the space in 2 seconds. His mother. The woman positioned deliberately to his mother's right. And Devon, standing exactly where she was, unshaken. What is happening here? His voice was low. That was what made everyone go still. Not volume. The absence of it. Mikyung turned to him with recovered composure. I am handling something that needs to be handled. You are shouting at my girlfriend and a guest in this house. She is not a guest. She is a problem. Mother. The single word was a full stop. Clean and absolute. She closed her mouth. He looked at the room. At the staged woman near his mother's chair who had smiled at him and was now reconsidering that decision. Then he looked at Devon. Something passed between them that the room could feel but not name. His mother tried again. Perfect timing. I was just explaining why this relationship is a... I heard what you were doing. He walked to where Devon stood. Not beside her. With her. His presence made the geometry of the room rearrange itself around that fact. Then he turned to face everyone. If she leaves, he said, I will leave with her. The room did not move. Not Mikyung. Not the woman standing beside her. Not a single person standing in that space had expected him to say it that fast, that plainly, without a single moment of deliberation. He had walked in, assessed the situation, and chosen. In front of all of them. So now tell me, what do you think happens next in a family like this, when the son refuses to bend? And if this is your first time here, subscribe. Because this story is only getting started. Mikyung forced herself to recover. Her expression smoothed over with the discipline of a woman who had spent decades refusing to be publicly rattled. This is not a discussion you should be having emotionally, she said. Then don't make it emotional, Sung-jae replied. He did not sit beside his mother. He did not sit beside the arranged woman. He stood, and the silence that followed had a direction to it, and that direction was away from everyone who had hoped this afternoon would go differently. A short time later they left. Inside the car, the city moved past the windows at a steady pace. Devon sat with her hands folded in her lap, her breathing controlled, her face composed. She had held herself together through the entire thing, and she was still holding now, but Sung-jae noticed the slight tension in her jaw, the way she was being very careful not to look at him. He watched the road for a moment. Then he spoke. I'm sorry you were treated like that. It's not your fault, she said. He shook his head. It is. I brought you into that space. Sung-jae, don't. She looked at him. I don't want to be the reason you're fighting your family, she said quietly. That's not something I'm comfortable with. He pulled to a stop at a light and turned toward her fully. Something in his expression had shifted. Not anger. Something more settled than that. More certain. Don't ever say that again. She held his gaze. I don't care what my family thinks, he said. I don't care what they want. What they arrange. What they decide is suitable. He paused. It is you I want. The light changed. He didn't look away for another moment. You are mine, he said. And I am not choosing between you and them. That choice was already made. Devon was quiet. The relief that moved through her was not loud. It was the kind that settled deep, the kind that comes after holding something tightly for too long and finally being told you can set it down. He reached over and steadied her hand without a word. It was enough. The next evening, Sungjae's phone rang. His mother's name on the screen. He let it ring twice before answering. Come home, Mikyung said. We need to talk properly. I'm busy. It's important. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll come. He should not have gone. He knew that when he walked into the estate meeting room and found his mother already seated, her posture arranged with intention, and Baek Nari seated across from her in a pale dress, hands folded like a woman waiting to be selected. Mikyung gestured at Nari with the quiet pride of someone presenting a completed project. This is the woman you will marry. She laid out Nari's credentials the way you might read items off a list. Family name. Business connections. Educational background. Social standing. Nari smiled at each point with the practiced patience of someone who had been through this kind of presentation before and found it favorable. Sungjae looked at her, then at his mother. Why are you introducing strangers into my life? Mikyung set down her cup. Because you are clearly incapable of choosing correctly. He did not answer that. He looked at the room, at the staging of it, at the clear calculation behind every element of this meeting, and something in him went very still. He stood. I already chose. Mikyung straightened. You didn't choose. You were influenced. No, he said it simply, without heat. I chose Devon. The temperature in the room dropped. That woman is not suitable for this family, Mikyung said. Sungjae looked at his mother with an expression that was not angry, not contemptuous, but something worse than both of those. Patient. The kind of patience that has already decided nothing here will change its mind. And why is that? He asked. She is here for money and power. She is a gold digger. He stared at his mother for a long moment. That's the excuse you come up with? I already told you. If she is not suitable, Sungjae said, cutting through it cleanly, then consider me unsuitable too. He walked out. His mother called his name once. He did not stop. Mikyung came to the hospital on a Thursday. Devon saw her walking through the corridor before she reached her and felt the intention in every step. She did not run. She did not hesitate. She sat down across from Devon in the small break room, folded her hands on the table, and spoke like a woman delivering a business decision. If you truly love my son, she said, you will stay away from him. For your own good. Devon set down her cup slowly. For my own good. This will not end well for you. You are not built for this world. Walk away now while it is still your choice. Devon looked at her for a moment. With respect, your son is a grown man. He makes his own decisions. That is not something you get to override. She paused. And this is my workplace. Don't come here again. Mikyung held her gaze for a moment, then stood and left without another word. That evening, Devon sat across from Sungjae at his dining table and told him everything. She kept her voice even. She was not looking for a reaction. She just wanted him to know. He was very still while she spoke. Then he stood up without a word, picked up his keys and left. He found his mother in the sitting room with Baek Nari, the two of them deep in conversation that stopped the moment he walked in. You went to her workplace, he said. Mikyung straightened. I was protecting you. You were harassing her. His voice was controlled, but the stillness behind it had an edge. At her job. You sat across from her and told her to disappear. Sungjae, I know what is best for you. No, he said. You feel like you do. There is a difference. Nari shifted in her seat. I can. He turned to her. Don't. Please just keep quiet. He looked back at his mother. You both misunderstand something. I don't need permission to love her. Not from this family. Not from anyone in this room. He walked out. It had started 18 months earlier, on a night that was never supposed to become anything. Devon had been on a late shift. She had been a nurse long enough that emergency calls no longer rattled her the way they once had. When the patient arrived, she focused on what mattered. Stabilize. Assess. Act. What she had not expected was the man on the gurney to be Han Sung-jae. She did not know who he was that night. She only knew he had been attacked and the injury was serious. She stayed with him through the worst of it, speaking to him in the calm, even tone she used with frightened patience, and when the crisis had passed she stepped back and let the attending physician take over. Before she left the room, he asked for her name. She gave it to him and walked away. He thought about her for 2 months. When he found her again, it was at the small restaurant where she ate lunch on Thursdays. He saw her through the window and went inside. She looked up, recognized him immediately, and said, "You healed well." That was how it started. He came back the next Thursday. And the one after that. Eventually, he stopped pretending it was coincidence, and she stopped pretending she had not noticed. What began as brief conversations slowly became something steadier. She talked to him directly, without ceremony, without treating him like the powerful man everyone else seemed to see. She treated him like a person. And he realized how rare that was. Months later, pressure began building around the Han family's business operations. Shipping contracts collapsed. Financial strain followed quietly behind it. Devon heard enough to understand more than Sung-jae realized she did. Her father was a private man with significant influence in financial circles. One evening, after hearing enough to recognize the problem, Devon made a careful suggestion to him about a struggling shipping route connected to the Han organization. Within weeks, the pressure eased. Sung-jae noticed. "You know something about this?" he asked her once. "No," she said calmly. "Not really." He knew she was hiding something. He just didn't know what. She told him months later during dinner at his apartment. "My family is wealthier than I let people assume," she admitted quietly. "The company that helped stabilize your shipping infrastructure belongs to my father now." Sung-jae looked at her for a long moment. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Because I wanted you to know me first." Something in his expression softened after that. Not because of her family's wealth, but because she had never once used it to impress him. By then, he already loved her. It was Han Yuri who noticed first that something had changed in her brother. Sung-jae's younger sister had been watching the situation for weeks with the focused curiosity of someone who was genuinely interested in how it resolved. She had seen the women her mother approved of come through their home over the years, polished, strategic, ambitious in ways that were tolerated because they pointed in the right direction, and she had always found them exhausting. She met Devon at a family dinner that Sung-jae had arranged before things became complicated. The two women had been seated near each other, and within 20 minutes Yuri had decided she liked her enormously. It was not just that Devon was warm, though she was. It was not just that she was funny in a dry, understated way that matched Yuri's own humor. It was that she seemed entirely uninterested in performing. She ate the food. She said what she thought. When Mi-kyung made a pointed comment across the table, Devon acknowledged it with a calm nod that gave nothing away. Yuri had texted her brother under the table, "Keep her." When the pressure from their mother intensified, Yuri found a way to be near Devon more often. She stopped by her workplace once on a Thursday, slid into the seat across from her with a coffee she had bought on the way, and said, "She's not going to stop easily, you know." Devon looked at her. "I know. She's not a bad person," Yuri said. "She just has a very fixed idea of what this family looks like. And you don't fit the picture she drew 20 years ago." Devon was quiet for a moment. "Then, do you think I should stop?" Yuri picked up her coffee. "I think you should stay exactly where you are." She paused. "He has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you. And I have watched him for 28 years. She set the cup down. "Don't let her win by leaving." That's what she's counting on. Devon didn't say anything, but something in her expression settled. "Besides," Yuri added, "I finally have someone to complain about him with. I'm not giving that up." Devon laughed. It was the first real laugh she had allowed herself in weeks. What happened next was not something anyone predicted, including Mi-kyung. Baek Nari had understood from the beginning that the arrangement was not going to be straightforward. Sung-jae's resistance was obvious. His mother's determination was equally obvious. What Nari had assessed, quietly and correctly, was that the obstacle was Devon Hall, and that the most efficient solution was to remove the obstacle. She had started with a visit. She had gone to Devon's workplace on a Tuesday afternoon with the composed confidence of someone accustomed to having conversations where she held all the leverage. She sat across from Devon in the small break room, folded her hands, and began to speak. "I think you understand what you are," Nari said pleasantly. "A temporary interest. These things happen. No judgment." Devon looked at her. "But you're making things complicated," Nari continued. "For him. For the family. If you actually care about him, you would recognize that and act accordingly." Devon had not raised her voice. She had not moved from her chair. She had looked at Nari with an expression of such total calm that it was, in its own way, more unnerving than anger. "I'm going to say this once," Devon said. "Don't come to my workplace. Don't approach me this way again. And don't make the mistake of thinking your confidence is the same thing as leverage." She paused. "Try something like this again and you will regret it." Nari had left. But she had not stopped. In the weeks that followed, she made several moves that were more serious than a conversation. She had access to the Han family's business structure through her family's connections, and she had used that access carefully. Financial records that should not have moved. And information leaked to a competing firm. A set of documents whose exposure would have created legal complications for the family's legitimate operations. Devon called Sung-jae after the workplace confrontation. He came to her apartment that night, and she told him everything. He listened without expression. When she was done, she said, "I think we should take a break for a while. All of this is draining me." Sung-jae was quiet for a long moment. He was looking at her with the same stillness he used in every room he walked into, but it had a different quality now. Something behind it that was less composed and more raw. "I know," he said. "I understand." He paused. "But I'm here. And nothing they do will ever tear us apart." Devon looked at him. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said. "I am." A pause stretched between them. Then he said it plainly, without ceremony, "I love you." She knew it. She had felt it in the way he had walked across a room and stood beside her without being asked. She had felt it in the car ride after the first confrontation, in the way he had steadied her hand. She had felt it every Thursday and every quiet evening and every moment he had chosen her in front of people who expected him to do otherwise. "I love you too," she said. He kissed her. She let him. The apartment was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, nothing felt like it was about to break. Nari's exposure came from a direction she had not accounted for. Internal audits inside the Han organization had been running for 2 weeks when an analyst flagged a series of transactions that did not align with authorized accounts. The trail was methodical. Someone had been careful, but not careful enough. Within 72 hours, the evidence had been verified, and within another 24, it had been placed in front of people with the authority to act on it. Baek Nari was arrested on a Wednesday morning. The story reached Mikyung by noon. She was sitting in the drawing room of the estate when Sung-jae came in. He did not sit down. He stood in the doorway and looked at his mother with an expression she had not seen on him before. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Something much quieter. "Do you see who you brought into this family?" he said. Mikyung said nothing. The woman she had vetted. The woman she had championed. The woman she had held up as proof that her son was choosing incorrectly. "She was stealing from us," Sung-jae said. "She was leaking information to competitors. And you put her in this house." Mikyung's hands were folded in her lap. Her face was still. But underneath the stillness, something was cracking. "The woman you called unsuitable," Sung-jae said. "The one you called a gold digger. The one you visited at her workplace." He paused. "She saved my life." Mikyung looked up. "There was an attack," he said. 18 months ago. I never told you the details because I knew how you would respond to them. But I was in a crisis, and she was the one who stayed. She stabilized me. She sat with me when it was serious. She did not ask for my name or my family or any compensation." He paused. She just stayed. The room was quiet. "And 8 months ago, when our shipping infrastructure was under pressure and we were losing ground, someone intervened through a financial intermediary. Someone whose family had the connections to do it quietly and the decency not to announce it." Mikyung was very still. "That was her father," Sung-jae said. "Robert Hall." Something shifted in Mikyung's expression. "He purchased the Daejin Logistics subsidiary. Years ago. You were in the room when it happened. You told father it was a fair deal." He watched her. "That is her father." Mikyung stood slowly. She moved to the window and stood with her back to the room for a long moment. She never said anything, Mi-kyung said. Quietly. No, Sung-jae agreed. She didn't have to. She could have used that. When I spoke to her the way I did. She could have. So you would act better? Mother, please. Mi-kyung turned around. Her face had changed. The architecture of certainty that she had maintained through every confrontation had given way to something older and less defended. I was wrong about her, she said. It was not a large statement. It did not contain elaborate self-reproach or dramatic reversal. It was just the truth, said plainly, and that plainness was what made it land. Sung-jae nodded once. I know, he said. The dinner happened 3 weeks later. Mi-kyung had requested it. Not a formal gathering. Not a staged presentation. Just a meal, the family, and Devon. Devon had come because Sung-jae had asked her to, and because Yuri had sent her a voice note that simply said, she's ready. Come. There had been a pause in that, and wear something nice. Not for her. For me. I want to take photos. Devon had laughed. Mi-kyung met her at the door. They stood in the entrance of the estate where, months before, she had called Devon a gold digger in front of a room full of people. I was wrong about you, Mi-kyung said. She did not reach for embellishment. I treated you badly. And I was wrong. Devon looked at her for a moment. I don't need your approval, she said. I never did. A pause, and then something in her expression softened. But I'll accept your apology. Mi-kyung nodded. Something in her exhaled. Yuri appeared at the far end of the hallway and waved enthusiastically. Can we eat now? I've been waiting for 30 minutes and the soup is getting cold. Han Yuri, Mi-kyung said. I'm just saying. Come in, Sung-jae said to Devon. She stepped inside. Dinner was warm in a way the estate had not been in a long time. Han Yuri dominated most of it, steering conversations toward lighter territory with the practiced ease of someone who had learned early that she was the family's best social lubricant. The grandmother, Han Bok-soon, arrived midway through the meal. She was small and sharp-eyed and moved with the decisive energy of a woman who had decided long ago that she did not have time for pretense. She sat down, looked at Devon directly, and said, Are you the one who saved my grandson? I was doing my job, Devon said. Bok-soon considered this. Then she nodded with the finality of someone who had just confirmed something she had already decided. Good, she said. You can stay. Yuri mouthed, I told you, across the table. Devon pressed her lips together to keep from laughing. The months that followed were not without adjustment. Families do not transform overnight, and Mi-kyung's acceptance was not the effortless kind. There were moments of awkwardness. Moments where old habits surfaced and had to be gently redirected. But the foundation had shifted, and what was being built on it now was honest in a way the previous arrangement never had been. Robert Hall came to dinner for the first time 6 months later. He was exactly as his daughter had described him, quiet, precise, completely unbothered by the formality of the Han estate. He and Mi-kyung spent an hour after the meal in something that resembled a very cautious mutual assessment, and at the end of it Mi-kyung told Sung-jae privately that she understood now what she had dismissed. The wedding took place on a Saturday in late spring. Devon had not made it large. She had no interest in spectacle for its own sake. What she had wanted was the people she loved in a room together, and that was what she got. Yuri had cried before the ceremony started and spent the entire thing pretending she hadn't, which meant she spent the entire thing with very wet eyes and an expression of aggressive nonchalance that fooled nobody. Robert Hall walked his daughter down the aisle with the measured step of a man who was feeling considerably more than he was displaying. When Sung-jae met them at the end and took Devon's hand, Robert Hall looked at him for a long moment. Take care of her, he said. I will, Sung-jae said. Robert Hall nodded, stepped back, and spent the rest of the ceremony standing very still with his jaw set in a way that suggested he was working hard to maintain composure. Mi-kyung sat in the front row beside Bok-soon. At some point during the vows, Bok-soon reached over and took her daughter-in-law's hand without comment. Mi-kyung did not pull away. When Sung-jae and Devon turned to face the room as husband and wife, the applause that came was not the polished, obligatory kind. It was real, warm and full and slightly chaotic, because Yuri had started it too early and too loudly, and everyone else had followed. Devon looked out at the room. At Yuri, who was already gesturing at the photographer with the authority of someone who had appointed herself wedding director. At her father, who was clapping steadily with the quiet dignity of a man whose face told you everything he wasn't saying. At Mikyung, who met her eyes and held them, and in that gaze gave her something she had never once asked for recognition, and something that had taken the long way to get there. She looked at Sung-jae. He was already looking at her, the way he always did. Like the room existed somewhere behind her, and she was the only fixed point in it. "You're crying," she said quietly. "I'm not," he said. "You absolutely are." "I'm not." She smiled. He did not look away. Outside, the spring evening was warm and the light was long, and somewhere behind them Yuri was loudly directing the photographer, and the grandmother was telling someone a story that had apparently been very funny in 1987. And Robert Hall was standing slightly apart from the crowd with a glass of something, watching his daughter. He smiled and felt fulfilled. And as the music carried through the warm spring evening, one thing became clear to everyone who had once doubted them. Han Sung-jae had chosen his wife long before anyone else finally understood why. So tell me, do you think Han Mikyung ever truly believed Devon was a gold digger, or was she just terrified of losing control over her son? And if you were Devon, would you have stayed and fought for love, or walked away the moment his family humiliated you? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe, leave a like, and let me know where you're watching from.